I treated my husband exactly how he treats me. He completely lost it. Last week I tried something I never thought I'd do. I treated my husband the exact same way he treats me. Same jokes, same dismissive tone, same eye-roll energy. By day 5, he slammed the car brakes in a parking lot and said, "I can't believe you'd treat me like this." And that's when I realized he didn't recognize himself. Here's what happened. I didn't wake up one day and decide to teach my husband a lesson. That's not how it started. It started the way these things usually do: slow, quiet, and almost reasonable. Like a dimmer switch turning down so gradually you don't notice you're sitting in the dark until someone else walks in and asks, "Are you okay?" My husband Mark and I have been married for 7 years. Together for 10. We're in our early 30s. No kids yet. We both work full-time. We're normal. Mortgage. 2 cars. A dog that's allergic to everything, and a shared calendar that always looks like a Tetris board. If you met Mark at a party, you'd probably like him. He's funny, confident. He's the kind of guy who can tell a story and have everyone laughing, including strangers. He's the guy who'll help someone carry a couch upstairs, then make a joke about it like it was no big deal. What people don't see is what it's like living with him. Mark has a sense of humor that only ever seems to go one direction at me. At first, it felt like harmless teasing. Stuff like, "Babe, do you ever know where your keys are?" Or, "You're cute when you get stressed, like a little angry hamster." He'd say it with a grin, like I was supposed to laugh too. And I did. Because what else do you do when someone you love frames disrespect as a joke? But over the years, the jokes got sharper, more frequent, less affectionate. If I asked him to do something, he'd act like I was nagging him. If I reminded him about plans, he'd sigh dramatically like I was managing him. If I got upset, he'd roll his eyes and say, "Here we go," like my feelings were a rerun he was tired of watching. And here's the part that really messes with you. He wasn't like that all the time. He could be sweet. He could be thoughtful. He'd bring home my favorite snack just because. He'd rub my shoulders when I was exhausted. He'd send me memes during the day. So I kept telling myself, this isn't abuse. This isn't even that bad. He's just blunt. He's sarcastic. He's stressed. But then the little moments started stacking up in my brain like unpaid bills. Like the time we were at dinner with friends, and I mispronounced a word, one of those words you only ever read, so you don't know how it sounds out loud. Mark laughed and corrected me like I was a kid in class. Everyone laughed too, and I laughed along because I didn't want to be the sensitive wife. Or the time I cleaned the entire kitchen after his family came over, and he walked in, saw the counter spotless, and said, "Wow, you finally figured out how to wipe things down. Proud of you." I stared at him, waiting for him to say he was joking. He didn't. He just opened the fridge. Or the time I had a work presentation I was anxious about. I told him I was nervous, and he said, "Well, maybe if you prepared instead of panicking, you'd feel better." No hug, no, "You've got this." Just a critique, served cold. Every time I tried to tell him something hurt my feelings, he acted like I was being dramatic, like I was accusing him of something insane. He'd say things like, "God, I can't say anything around you. You always take it the wrong way. It's just a joke. You're too sensitive." And the worst one, the one that always made me feel like I was the problem. I guess I'm just a terrible husband then. It was like emotional jujitsu. I'd come to him with a bruise, and he'd hand me guilt until I apologized for bleeding. So I stopped bringing it up. I got quieter, more careful. I started editing myself in my own house like I was living with a boss instead of a partner. And I didn't even realize I was doing it until one random Tuesday night when I was trying to tell Mark about something that happened at work. I was talking. He was on his phone. I paused mid-sentence. He didn't notice. So I said, "Hey, can you put your phone down for a second?" He sighed like I'd asked him to donate a kidney. Then he put it down face up on the table and said, "Okay, perform." Perform. That word hit me so hard I felt my stomach drop. I said, "Did you just say perform?" He smirked. "I mean, you wanted my attention." And I swear, something in my brain clicked. Not like anger, more like clarity. like I'd been underwater for years, and suddenly my head broke the surface. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stared at him for a second and said, very calmly, okay. Then I got up, went to the kitchen, and started making myself tea. And while the kettle boiled, a thought settled into my head with this weird, steady, calm, what if I treated him the way he treats me? Not in some dramatic revenge way, not to win, just to show him, to mirror it back so he could finally see what it feels like. Because clearly, telling him wasn't working. And the scary part was, the more I thought about it, the more I realized how easy it would be. Because Mark had already written the script, all I had to do was read his lines. I didn't announce anything. I didn't give him a warning like, starting tomorrow, I'm going to reflect your behavior. I just started. The next morning, Mark was in the kitchen making coffee. He was wearing that half-awake expression he always has before caffeine, and he was clanking around looking for a clean mug. He opened the dishwasher, frowned, and said, "Why is nothing put away?" Normally I'd say, "Oh, I forgot last night," and then I'd rush to fix it. Instead, I copied his exact tone light, amused, slightly condescending. I said, "Well, maybe if you used your eyes instead of complaining, you'd see the mugs are right there." He froze, not like I'd screamed, more like his brain buffered. Then he gave a short laugh and said, "Okay, someone woke up spicy." I smiled in the same way he does when he thinks he's being clever. It's just a joke. And I walked out of the kitchen. My heart was pounding like I'd committed a felony. But here's what shocked me. Nothing happened. He didn't yell. He didn't start a fight. He just looked confused. That evening, he told me about an issue at work. His boss had dumped a last-minute task on him. Normally, I would have empathized. "That's so frustrating. I'm sorry." Instead, I said, "Well, maybe if you managed your time better, people wouldn't think you're available." Mark blinked. "What?" I shrugged. "Just saying." He stared at me for a long second. Then he chuckled like I was doing a bit. "Okay, Dr. Phil." I kept my voice calm. "I can't say anything around you?" He stopped laughing. Now, his face was doing something I'd seen a million times, but never aimed at him. That tightness around the mouth. The eyes narrowing slightly like he was trying to figure out what angle I was playing. "Are you mad at me?" he asked. I did what he always does. I acted like he was ridiculous. Mad? Why would I be mad? The next day, I continued. If he left socks on the floor, instead of quietly picking them up, I said, "Wow, impressive. You almost made it to the hamper. So close." If he asked what was for dinner, I said, "Food, probably, unless you want to take initiative for once." If he tried to show me a video on his phone, I looked for 2 seconds and said, "That's something," then went back to what I was doing. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't calling him names. I wasn't even raising my voice. I was doing exactly what he did, dismissing, minimizing, and making little jokes that weren't really jokes. By day 3, Mark was noticeably unsettled. He started asking if I was okay. He started doing this weird thing where he hovered near me like he was waiting for me to snap back into the normal version of me. The irony was so thick it almost made me laugh. On Thursday night, he tried to initiate sex. This might sound random, but for us, it was a pattern. When Mark felt tension, his instinct was physical closeness, not emotional discussion. He kissed my neck, hands on my waist, and said, "Come to bed." Normally, part of me would be relieved. Like, okay, we're fine. He still wants me. But I stepped back. I said, "God, is that all you think about?" Mark pulled away like I slapped him. "What?" he said, genuinely offended. I tilted my head, calm and almost bored. "Relax, it's just a joke." He stared at me, eyes wide, and said, "That's not funny." And I said softly, "Oh, so now we care about what's funny." That was the first time I saw anger flash in him, not the casual irritation he usually had when he thought I was overreacting, but real anger. His voice went sharp. "What is your problem this week?" And my stomach tightened because the truth was sitting right there. But I stayed on script. "I don't have a problem," I said. "You're being too sensitive." Silence. He looked like he couldn't believe I'd said it. Then he pointed at me and said, "You're doing that thing." I raised an eyebrow, the same way he does. What thing? That thing where you twist everything and act like I'm crazy, he snapped. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I said, I guess I'm just a terrible wife then. Mark threw his hands up like he was losing his mind. Oh my God, are you hearing yourself? And that's when I realized something important. He could hear it perfectly. He just couldn't stand it when it wasn't coming from him. By Friday, Mark was spiraling. Not because I'd done something extreme, but because I'd stopped absorbing the impact for him. When you're the one who always lets it go, you become the emotional shock absorber. You take the hit so the other person doesn't have to feel it. And the moment you stop, the hit lands where it always should have. That night, we were supposed to go to his friend's birthday dinner. Mark came home late, already irritated, and started complaining about traffic, his boss, the restaurant, choice everything. I was in the bathroom curling my hair, and he leaned against the doorway watching me. He said, "Are you going to wear that?" Normally, I'd ask what he meant. I'd second-guess myself. I'd change. Instead, I said, "Are you going to talk like that?" He scoffed. It was a question. I looked at him in the mirror and said, "No, it was criticism. But it's fine. I'm used to it." Mark's face hardened. "Can you stop with the attitude?" I turned around slowly and said in the calmest voice I could manage, "Can you?" He stepped into the bathroom. "What is going on with you? You've been acting like a complete..." He stopped himself, like he realized he was about to say something worse. I waited. He exhaled, frustrated. "Did I do something?" I shrugged. "If you don't know, I can't explain it to you." That was one of his favorite lines whenever I tried to talk about feelings. And saying it out loud made me feel both powerful and sick. Mark stared at me like I'd grown a second head. On the drive to dinner, the silence was so heavy it felt like pressure in my ears. Mark gripped the steering wheel like it owed him money. Halfway there, he said, "Are you going to be weird all night?" I looked out the window and said, "I don't know. Depends if you can behave." His jaw clenched. "Excuse me?" I turned to him. Neutral expression. "See? That tone? You always do that." He swerved slightly, not dangerously, but enough to show he was reacting physically. "I always do what?" I kept my voice steady. "You talk down to me. You make jokes at my expense. You dismiss me. And when I tell you, you act like I'm crazy." Mark's hands tightened on the wheel. "So this is about some joke?" And that line, "some joke," was like a match near gasoline. I said, "No, it's about respect. And since you don't seem to understand it when I say it, I figured I'd demonstrate." Mark slammed the brakes at a red light harder than necessary and whipped his head toward me. "You've been doing this on purpose?" he demanded. I met his eyes. "Yes." His face went red. "That is insane." I blinked. "It's literally what you do." "That's different," he snapped. "How?" I asked. His voice rose. "Because I'm not trying to hurt you. You're trying to hurt me." I didn't raise my voice. "Mark, you do hurt me. You just don't like acknowledging it." He hit the steering wheel with his palm. "This is manipulative." I nodded slowly. "That's what it feels like." He looked like he might actually scream. His breathing was fast, shoulders tight, and I realized he wasn't used to feeling emotionally unsafe because I'd always made sure the environment stayed comfortable for him, even if I was uncomfortable. We pulled into the parking lot and he turned off the car, sitting there shaking with anger. Then he said the sentence I'll never forget. "I can't believe you would treat me like this." I stared at him, and the calm I'd been forcing cracked just enough for my real emotion to come through. I said quietly, "I can't believe you don't recognize yourself." We didn't go into the restaurant. Mark started talking fast, like he was trying to regain control. "So what? You're punishing me. You're playing games. You're going to embarrass me until I apologize?" I said, "I'm not punishing you. I'm showing you what it's like." He laughed one of those bitter laughs. "Okay, so you admit it's bad. You admit you're being cruel." I replied, "Yes, it feels cruel. That's the point." Mark leaned back, staring at the ceiling of the car like he was praying for patience. Then he said, "You know what? Fine. If you think I'm such a monster, maybe you should just leave." I won. And there it was. The nuclear option. The threat designed to end the conversation by making me panic. Normally, I would. Normally, I'd say, no, I don't want that. But this time, I just said, okay. Mark snapped his head toward me. Okay? I nodded. If that's what you want. His eyes widened. He looked genuinely scared for the first time in years. And then he did something I'd never seen him do. He started crying, not sobbing dramatically, just tears slipping out while he tried to hold his face together. I don't understand what's happening, he said, voice breaking. Why are you doing this? I love you. My chest tightened. Because I knew he loved me in his way. But love without respect is just possession with better PR. I said, I love you too. That's why this hurts, and that's why it has to stop. We drove home in silence. When we got inside, Mark went straight to the living room and sat down like someone had unplugged him. The dog circled him, confused. I put my coat away, slow and deliberate, because my hands were shaking. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to win. I wanted him to finally hear me. After a few minutes, Mark said, "So you think I'm abusive?" That word hit the air like a glass breaking, because I hadn't said it, but it was hovering there. I chose my words carefully. I think you've been consistently unkind, and when I ask for kindness, you punish me for having feelings. Mark rubbed his face. I don't punish you. I nodded. You do. You roll your eyes. You mock me. You act like I'm a burden. You tell me I'm too sensitive. You turn it into a joke so I look unreasonable. He stared at the carpet like it had answers. Then he said, quietly, I didn't know it was that bad. And I said something I'd been holding back for years. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. Mark flinched, I continued, still calm. Every time I brought it up, you shut it down. You trained me to stop talking. He swallowed. I thought you were just emotional. And for a second, I saw at the story he'd been telling himself. That he was logical and I was dramatic. That his sarcasm was humor and my reaction was overreaction. It's a convenient story. It lets you be the good guy. I said, I'm not emotional. I'm human. And I've been lonely in this marriage. Mark's eyes filled again. I didn't mean to. I leaned forward. Intent doesn't erase impact. I'm done living in a house where I feel stupid for having feelings. He nodded, wiping his face. So what now? This was the moment where, in the past, I would have softened everything and made it easy for him. But I didn't. I said, now we get help. Therapy. Or we don't do this. Mark looked up. Therapy? Yes, I said. And not one session where you charm the therapist and I sit there quietly. Real therapy. And real changes. He hesitated. I don't want some stranger telling me I'm a bad person. I replied. Then stop acting like one. The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was heavy with reality. Finally, Mark said, okay, I'll go. I believed him in that moment. But I also knew something important. Agreeing to therapy is not the same as changing. So I set boundaries. And I said them out loud like I was reading a contract. No more too sensitive. No more eye-rolling when I talk. No more mocking me in front of people. If you slip, you apologize. Immediately. Mark nodded slowly. Okay. And if you can't do that, I added, I will leave. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Not the patient wife. Not the peacekeeper. Not the emotional punching bag. A person with a line. And weirdly, that was the first time in a long time I felt safe in my own body. We started couples therapy 2 weeks later. The first session was exactly what I feared. Mark was charming, funny, self-deprecating in a way that made him seem humble. But our therapist, an older woman with calm eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense, didn't get hypnotized. At one point, Mark said, I'm just sarcastic. That's how I grew up. And she replied, sarcasm can be a defense mechanism. It can also be a weapon. Which one is it for you? Mark didn't have an answer. Over the next few sessions, things got messy. Because once you stop letting someone treat you badly, they don't just magically become kind. First, they get confused. Then they get angry. Then they bargain. Then if they're willing, they grieve the old dynamic. Mark did slip sometimes. He'd make a comment, then catch himself. Sometimes he apologized. Sometimes he got defensive. But something had changed. I no longer swallowed it. If he said, "You're being dramatic," I'd say, "That's not acceptable. Try again." If he rolled his eyes, I'd stop talking and say, "When you're ready to listen with respect, I'll continue." And the strangest thing? The more consistent I was, the calmer the house became. Because the old version of me was unpredictable in a different way. I'd smile, 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 and then cry in the shower. I'd agree, 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 and then resent him silently for weeks. Now I was clear. Not cruel. Clear. About 3 months in, we went to dinner with friends again, the same group from before. Someone teased me lightly about being organized, and Mark started to pile on out of habit. He opened his mouth, then paused. Then he said, "Actually, she's the reason our life runs at all. I'd be lost without her." The table went quiet for a second. I felt heat rush to my face, not embarrassment this time. Something like relief. Later in the car, Mark said, "I wanted to make the joke. It was right there." I nodded. "I know." He looked at the road and said, "I didn't realize how often I do it. It's like I get a hit from it. Like it makes me feel bigger." That honesty hit me harder than the fighting ever did. I said, "And it makes me feel smaller." He swallowed. "I'm sorry." And I believed him. But here's the part I'm still sitting with, and why I'm posting. Mark is improving. Genuinely, he's trying. He's learning how to pause. He's learning how to validate instead of criticize. But sometimes I wonder, why did it take me becoming him for him to understand? Why wasn't my pain enough? Why wasn't my please stop enough? And I'm scared of the answer, because it makes me question the foundation of everything. I'm also wrestling with guilt, because mirroring him back, it worked. It forced a confrontation. But it also felt ugly. It felt like I stepped into something I didn't want inside me. I don't want to be sarcastic and sharp. I don't want to win arguments. I want peace. So now I'm trying to do something different. Hold boundaries without becoming cruel. And Mark? He's having to live with the fact that the funny guy persona had a cost and I was the one paying it. We're still in therapy. We're still together. Some days I feel hopeful. Some days I feel angry all over again. But one thing is certain. He will never again be allowed to say, "It's just a joke," while I'm the one bleeding. So, was I wrong for mirroring him? Or was it the only way to make him understand? I genuinely want to know what you do. If you want more Reddit-style stories like this, subscribe.